You're listening to DruidCast episode 222.
I'm sorry, Mom. I'm a pagan, sold my soul to Carl Sagan, and I know that's your worst nightmare coming true. Remember when you said you love God more than you love me? No wonder I have these abandonment issues. I might be a witch because I like burning candles, and I have a crystal collection. But you believe you're possessed by a man who offers you cosmic protection. Don't pray for me, I don't need to be forgiven. Everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. We all want to have the answers and we all want to go to heaven, but everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. Religion. Sorry, Dad, I'm a heathen. I'm happy with my demons. I discovered they're a part of who I am. And I know you'll be embarrassed when you see the truth about my life and sexuality on Instagram. But your version of God sounds like my abusive ex, the one I was too scared to leave. Do I really deserve to be tortured forever because I no longer believe? Don't pray for me, I don't need to be forgiven. Everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. We all want to have the answers and we all want to go to heaven, but everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. Religion. So ring the bells, light the effigy, burn the witch if that's what you think of me. I didn't lose my faith, I threw it away. Ring the bells, light the effigy, burn the witch if that's what you think of me. I didn't lose my faith, I threw it away, I threw it away. Don't pray for me, I don't need to be forgiven. Everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. We all want to have the answers and we all want to go to heaven, but everybody goes to hell in somebody else's religion. Religion.
I just want to take a moment and apologize to anyone I might have hurt, or to anyone I tried to convert, either successfully or unsuccessfully. And to my best friend Justine, I'm really sorry about that time I called you in the middle of the night and I begged you to accept Jesus as your savior so you wouldn't go to hell. That was really shitty. And to my mom and dad, I love you.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to DruidCast episode 202. I am your host, Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of the month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about membership to the Order and our courses, you can do that at our website, which is druidry.org. What an incredible song to open the show. Cindy Carpenter's Everybody Goes to Hell. It was sent to me by my bardic buddy and that incredible guitarist as well, Brian Henke, who was equally moved by it and sent it over for me to listen to. So I dropped Cindy an email to ask if I could play it on the show, and I'm so happy that she said yes. An emotional track, and I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. The talky bit this month continues on from Christopher Hughes's talk last month with the second of the talks given at the OBOD Winter Gathering last December. This one is from Jenny Ousel and discusses death rituals, burial customs, modern barrows, and so much more. It's another deep and moving talk, so come on, grab that cuppa, my friends, as we return to Strode Theatre near Glastonbury last December one more time.
The talky bit.
I sort of inhabit that really niche place where death studies meets pagan studies meets ritual studies. I think it consists of me, probably. So Mortality is the industry journal for death and bereavement studies. And the most recent edition of this, which arrived on my desk pretty much as I was leaving to come here, opens with an article by Kirsten Bleen, who is an American scholar who was writing about composting. So I thought, well, that's quite well put, quite well timed. And her abstract, I think, for this paper is worth reading. It says, the paper is called Compost Me, a more than humifesto, speaks to my desire to be composted, exploring what human composting is and how the process works, in addition to what human composting can teach us about being and becoming more than human. As part of this more than humanifesto, I advocate for an extended sense of self, one that mixes and mingles with other beings and bodies, to compost discourses that present humans as separate from and superior to the ecologies in which they are intimately a part. And she finishes with a poem, and I would like to start with that poem, because I think it encapsulates a lot of what Chris was trying to say, or was succeeding in saying, in fact, in his paper. It says, it's called When You Find Me Dead. When you find me dead, please do not pack my cavities, puncture my organs and drain my blood to pump chemicals through my arteries. Instead, allow my body to embrace the messiness of decay, the hardening and softening of my being as it becomes something more than me. When you find me dead, please do not incinerate what remains, melting soft tissue to bone with fossil fuels, while sending pollutants like prayers into the sky. Instead, allow my body to experience the sweet surrender of rot, the falling away of form, and the natural dissolution of my material self. When you find me dead, please do not reduce me with an alkali solution to liquid effluent, boiling my flesh to bone. Instead, allow my body to know the taste of oxygen and the gentle turning of time. When you find me dead, please don't plant me in shallow ground or confine me to a casket in a concrete-lined vault. Instead, allow my body to compost into dark humus, nutrient-rich organic matter made with the love of hay, alfalfa, straw, and wildflowers. When you find me dead, please do not make a grave with stones, trees, signs, benches, or GPS coordinates. Instead, allow the dirt that was me to simply just be. When you find me dead, please turn my body into soil, so I can be scattered, kicked and strewed about, nourishing the more than human world with the dust of my former self. In doing so, allow what was my body to become disentangled from my humanity, enmeshed and earthed in the mystery and muck of the teeming aliveness within which I was always already a part. And now for something completely different. So, first of all, I have 45 minutes, slightly less now. Everything I say is going to be curtailed, it's going to be incomplete, it's going to be brief, it's going to be part of the story. So please bear that in mind, be aware of that. The first thing I want to say, and I'm not going to say very much about the human dead body. Chris has already done that, and that's a different talk. I'm going to talk mostly about the ritualization of death and what we do as human animals to deal with bereavement and death. But the first thing I want to say is about the body, and again it kind of builds on what Chris said, that human bodies are incredibly complicated and difficult things to deal with because they are multivalent, they have multiple facets, they are multi-storied. They both are and are not simultaneously the person that has died. And this is something that is extremely difficult to deal with. And it's also why I personally, and it's a personal thing, feel that it is important for people to spend time with their dead after they've died, because that process of assimilating the new reality and the new relationship with the dead is easier if you are able to spend time with them, I think. Human bodies are problematic. They're messy, they're smelly, they remind us of our own mortality. They remind us you cannot turn away from the fact that we are all going to become like that. I remember there was I think it's quite a well-known inscription on a gravestone, I forget where it is, but it says, "Remember me as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you will be. Prepare yourself to follow me." It's it's good. But it's also difficult, and it means that we want to put death where we can't see it, particularly in the West. And therefore, we need to deal with bodies in quite complex ways. We need to deal with the physicality of bodies in various ways, which, as I said, is a different talk. But we also need ways of ritually transforming the body and ritually transforming the death into something that we can deal with and something that we can relate to and something that transforms our relationship with the person that's died. And that is what I am mostly going to be speaking about, the ritual side of that. Most of my research, so I have two hats on at the moment. I have many hats in my life. I have two on at the moment. One is as an academic, as a researcher, that deals with death, bereavement, and all that jazz. And the other one is, as Emma said, as a funeral director. So I do this in my daily life. I engage with bodies, I engage with the bereaved. My partner and I, we own an independent funeral home in the northeast of England that is associated with the Good Funeral Guide. We call ourselves progressive. When we first started, the only term that existed was alternative. And I really objected to being called an alternative funeral director because nothing we do ought to be alternative. But it is quite progressive in that it's not, if you go anywhere near us, we don't look like funeral directors, we don't dress like funeral directors. The office doesn't look like a funeral home. We try and take away as many barriers between us and the people that we work with as we can. And we see ourselves as public servants, we see ourselves as trying to facilitate. And I'm going to come back and say a little bit more about that as we go on. I'm going to say there's one thing that Chris said that I'm going to disagree with, and that is that you never see a poor funeral director. Because actually, we are kind of like the camera of the funeral world. We're not one of these big multi-corporations. We do struggle. Quite a few have gone out of business while we've been in business, which is about 14 years now. And there is currently a big threat to companies like ours, which I'm going to come back to shortly. So starting with my research side, most of the research that I did was carried out between 2014 and 2022, and I probably bugged quite a few of you with it while I was doing it. And one of my research methods was a survey, asking about attitudes to death, dying, funerals, engagement with ancient sites, all sorts of things like that. Now, when I first started doing my PhD, everybody that spoke to me said, if you do a survey, if you're lucky, maybe 6, 7 people respond. And Keith said to me, how many people do you want? I said, 100 would be brilliant. I can do statistical things with 100 respondents. 50 would be good. Yeah, well, I got 634. Turns out pagans really like talking, which gave me a different set of problems. I mean, the coding was a nightmare. But it does mean that I am currently sitting, I think, on the biggest research resource in the world on pagans, death and dying. So there are other things to be done with that research body at some point in the future, which will be fun. I looked at all sorts of things. I looked at Samhain ritual, I looked at Mary Lloyd's, I looked at, obviously I looked at natural burial, I looked at all sorts of things that had to do with Druids and death and dying. But for this talk, I'm really going to concentrate just on funerals, which was just one part of what I did. And I looked at several different types of funerals. Not surprisingly, it will not surprise you to know that something like 84% of the people that I spoke to said that they would like a natural burial. That was what they saw as the Druidic ideal for their funeral. However, a lot of people said that they realised that this was not a realistic option for them for a number of different reasons. There's a lot more natural burial grounds around than there used to be. I think it's now something like on a par with the number of crematoria, particularly in England. There are fewer in Scotland and Wales. But a lot of people said, we're Druids, our family are not Druids, they're going to be really weirded out by a lot of this stuff. We're just facing the fact that probably we are going to have a fairly straightforward, normal crematorium service. Now, all the ecological stuff about cremators is true. It's better than it used to be because all cremators are now fitted with very, very high specification filters. They have to be by law. But it is still not an ecological choice. And that is a discussion for another day. That is a different issue. But most people I spoke to said, probably realistically it's going to be a crematorium service. So I spoke to quite a lot of Druidic celebrants, people that will go into a crematorium for people who are Druids and people who are not Druids, and will take a service in a crematorium. So what looks different about that from a normal crematorium service? Well, the first thing is that given half a chance, they will move the furniture. And they will do what the crematorium architects would have done now, probably, I don't know, and they put the coffin in the middle. Because the dead person is the important person in a funeral. And they have it looking a lot less like a church with a congregation and a coffin sort of somewhere at the front, maybe. And the coffin is central. In fact, there's one crematorium we go to where the coffin is out at the side and you pretty much can't see it at all. And the other thing that looks really different is that those funerals are not things that happen to you. So very often you go to a funeral for somebody that you know very well, maybe your mother, your father, your brother, your wife, your husband, and you have a celebrant tell you things you already know about them. Has its place, it's not meaningless. But the Druid celebrants that I spoke to, their funerals were performative and they were inclusive and they involved all of the people that were there. So there was very little of the life story and the eulogy because the people there, by and large, knew that. What there was singing and there were poems and there were people telling stories. And it was all of those people. There was an acknowledgement of the elements that centred the dead person in the symbolic universe, at the centre of that universe, enmeshed and included with the elements and the world around. The next type of funeral that I looked at had to do with barrows. I am going to say very, very little about barrows, because if I start, I will not stop. This is my passion. I will talk for hours about the new barrows. Stop me and ask. Now, these are obviously really interesting from a Druidic point of view. So these are, the original one was at All Cannings in Wiltshire, and it is actually built within sight of West Kennet Long Barrow. Well, it would be, but there's a hill in the way. It's about 3 miles away. And these are reconstructed Neolithic and Bronze Age style barrows that have niches in the walls that are designed to take cremated remains. And that's fascinating. And it's fascinating. It's not only Druids that are in there. Again, stop me and ask. There's loads of other stuff going on, but there are Druids that have connections there. And West Kennet, All Cannings, is actually one of only 2 officially designated, legally recognised Druidic sites of worship in the country. The other one is somebody's flat in Blackpool, and at some point I'm going to have to find out what's going on there. But this one, and there are Druid ceremonies there, particularly on the autumn equinox. And the last interview I conducted for my PhD was the widow of the Archdruid of Avebury, whose cremated remains are actually in that barrow, and who was there for the opening ceremony. There are photographs of him at the opening ceremony. So why are people interested in these? Why are Druids interested in these? Well, there's obviously this connection to this concept of ancestors and what the ancestors were doing. Now, what our ancestors were actually doing with these barrows is so out there that you would not believe it. I would love to know what was in their heads. It was fascinating, but they were moving bits of bodies around, they were taking bits in, they were putting bits back. There are people who are built into the structure of the barrows. There are people that are, there's little places where there's piles of skulls, piles of femurs. The number of long bones and skulls don't add up to the number of people. They were doing some really weird shit. And I'd love to know what it was. But obviously that's not what we're doing. We have a very different culture and we're using them differently, and we're using them for cremated remains. But really, from a ritual point of view, what is fascinating about these is that there are no time limits. They are set within natural worlds. People feel a connection to nature as well as a connection to ancestors. And again, I have posited in my research that while Druids typically speak of ancestors of blood, place, and tradition, that very often what we are engaging with is cultural or tribal ancestors. We are specifically engaging with a homogeneous group of pre-Christian ancestors with whom we feel this affective connection. We feel that we are continuing what they were doing in some way. And so what these things allow us to do ritually is basically anything we want. So certainly the one at St Neots, Willow Row, has a wide circular area outside it, not dissimilar to the ones that were there in the original barrows, which is there as a performative space. And you can take the coffin there, you can put it in the barrow, you can put it outside the barrow, You can then spend as much time as you like. You can have the whole day doing a funeral service, doing the singing and the dancing. You can have food, you can have drink. You can then take the coffin away for a direct cremation. This is one of the few times when direct cremation is a good idea. I'll come back to that later. And then you can have another day where you are putting the cremated remains into the barrow and you are ritualizing that. And one of the things that is really fascinating, I said I wasn't going to talk about barrows. One of the things that is really fascinating is that they deliberately, and this was a decision they made quite early on at All Cannings, is that they made the niches, they made the things that close the niches in permeable so they can be open, so that the relationship between you and the person that is in there continues to be an open one. You can keep talking to them. And they have had families there. There's a Hong Kong Buddhist family that use it as their family shrine, and every year they come and do ritual with their ancestors. There was another family there that wanted Grandad at their wedding, and Grandad died before they got married, so they had the wedding in the barrow. And Grandad was there. And it's this openness and permeability that is a real ritual possibility with these barrows that excites me. Enough of the barrows. Natural burial. Obviously, there's a lot of things in common here with the barrows. And this was something, because it won't surprise you to hear that I interviewed Chris for my PhD research. It took me 4 years to track him down, but I got there. And we talked about the barrows and natural burial and the commonalities there. And the word that kept coming up was community. And the fact that in the barrows and in natural burial grounds, almost uniquely in Britain, you have communities of the living that are interacting actively with communities of the dead. And that is something we don't do well in this country. Most other places do it okay. It's something we don't do well. We have cut ourselves off from the resource that is our ancestors, and we have done it almost deliberately. And some of these places open up those ritual possibilities to be doing that again. I'm just going to mention very much in passing, there is another way of disposing of the dead. I use that word advisedly, which is called resumation. It's something that is not currently practiced in Britain, but it will be very shortly, I think. It's coming in. My supervisor was a big fan of this, was trying to introduce it in County Durham. And it basically involves dissolving the body in very high pressure alkali solution. Its ecological benefits outweigh cremation by a great deal. It is ecologically far better. To me, and again, this is a purely personal response, it is ritually unsatisfying, and it just creeps me out. I can't really say it any better than that. Yes, the process is ecologically sound. It uses much less electricity. It produces a liquid which is nutrient rich, which could in theory be used as fertilizer, but nowhere that I know of is using it as fertilizer. They are putting it into the sewage system. So, and to me that kind of feels like, let's flush Granny down the drain. It doesn't speak to me. And then the skeleton, as in all three of these methods, whether it's composting, whether it's cremation, or whether it's resumation, what happens to the skeleton is the same, is that it's ground in a cremulator. So what you are left with is the white powder, which can be used ritually in any of the ways that you would use cremated remains, which in this country, where we have almost complete freedom with what we do with cremated remains, which is quite unique, is almost unlimited. And, from a magical perspective, the things that you can do with cremated remains are quite interesting. Composting, Christopher's said it, so I will leave that part there and move on. So in terms of Druidic funerals, what are the ideas that unite them and bring them together? What is it that allows us tentatively, even with all the variety, with all the diversity, is it possible to start, and we're very much at the beginning of the process, because modern British Druidry, certainly modern British pagan Druidry, as we recognise it now, has not been going for very long. And it does not, therefore, really have a funeral or a death tradition. It's starting to develop one now. OBOD has funeral celebrant training courses. It's starting to become a thing, but it's only just starting to become a thing. So can we tentatively start to talk about a Druid funeral? What does a Druid funeral look like? And I would say that we can begin to make some tentative suggestions of what a Druid funeral looks like. First of all, there is a concern with ecology. We want to get it right. We want to not mess the planet up any more than we can. Hence, 84% talking about natural burial, which is better. It's better the more shallow the burial is. This is something that is not widely known. You need to be no more than 3 feet down if you are actually going to be of any nutritional benefit to anything. And some natural burial grounds do that and some don't. It's, a case of do your research. There were also a lot of people that I interviewed and a lot of people in the surveys, and I am just going to put that out there because I think it's important. This is not something people want to hear, but I think you kind of need to hear it. A lot of people said, particularly when I was doing the barrows, why are we putting cremated remains in barrows? Because then they're cut off, they're separated, we could put them in the ground where there would be nourishing things. Please don't do that. Cremated remains on their own, I mean, what Chris is talking about, putting them back into compost, yeah, that's great, that works fine. If you are going to take cremated remains and you are going to put them round a tree, you are going to kill that tree. Okay? Cremated remains on their own have no nutritional value. They are not good compost, and, spreading them over wide areas does not do any good. So just putting that out there, folks. But we do have this concern we want to do things that are ecologically valuable, that are in keeping with the natural world, whilst acknowledging that natural world is a hugely problematic term because nature is something that we invented, but we'll park that for now. The other thing that is really noticeable about a Druid funeral is relationality, the importance of relationships. Relationships between the mourners, between the bereaved, relationships between the family of the person that has died and the person that has died. One of the questions I asked celebrants was, who is a funeral for? Now, I asked this pretty widely across a number of different areas, and the thing that came back fairly uniquely from the Druids was, it's for the family and the friends, the person that has died, but it is also for the person that has died. And this is something that is not generally there in civil celebrants, this idea that part of the purpose of the funeral is for the person that has died. So relationships, the changing, the transformation of relationships between the person that has died and the other people that are there. The relationships between the person that has died and the more than human world. And the more than human world is a phrase that came largely from David Abram in his book, The Sense of the Sensual, I think it's called. Please, thank you. Sensuous, that's it. Please read that book. If you have no other takeaway from me today, please read that book. Fabulous book. The Spell of the Sensuous. So that could be, if you're in a natural burial ground, the ecology, the plant, the animal life in that place have a relationship to the dead person. Spirits, ancestors, depending on your worldview, also in relationship with the dead person. Connection, relationship, connection. Those things are hugely important. Engagement with the physicality of the dead person. That's something we do well. We very often, again speaking to celebrants, we wash the person, we dress them, we anoint them with oils, we sing to them, we talk to them, we tell them that we love them. We centre them in the middle. We don't regard them, as funeral directors sometimes do, as a logistic problem that needs to be got from one place to another. And Druids do this very well, and the wider population doesn't. And this is something that I feel we have to offer to the wider world. Engagement with the ancestors. Part of the purpose of a funeral is to turn somebody from a friend, a relation, a mother, a lover, a brother, into an ancestor. Ancestor is a really complicated term, means different things to different people. I want to say a little bit about a term that is quite big in anthropology that you may not have come across before, but I think it is really relevant in terms of the concept of ancestry. And that term is individuality. So we all know what an individual is. And Western culture has become almost a cult of the individual. And what we think of as progressive good funerals are also cults of the individuals. You will find, if you see these co-op adverts, a lot of the time, did I say that out loud? A lot of that is about, let's celebrate the individual, let's go on this route, let's have jazzy clothes, let's have coffins with pictures on them. And don't get me wrong, all of those things are fine, they're good, they have a purpose. But that's all about the individual. And what anthropologists sometimes talk about, and this is a term that came from an anthropologist that was studying Milesian culture, Marilyn Strathern, I think, is individuality. And it's a different way of engaging with personhood. So we tend to think of personhood as an individual, whereas this way of looking at it is the idea that yourself, your personhood, is constructed entirely in relationship and does not really exist outside of relationship. You are, in fact, the sum of the relationships and the web of connections and the web of connections that you have made, the web of stories in which you participate. And all of those things together make you into what you are. So, quote here from my PhD. So a individual exists as a separate entity in isolation from those around it. So the individual exists as a separate entity in isolation from those around it. In postmodern thinking, we encounter the cult of the individual, where the uniqueness of each person is prioritized and individual choice is held up as a fundamental virtue. By contrast, the individual exists only in relationship with others, human and otherwise. The individual is the product of community and relationship, and the self exists only within this context. There is a very real sense in which the others with whom a person is in relationship become and remain a part of them. Non-separation. The dead are a part of us, and we are a part of them. Not just symbolically, but physically, genetically. I have probably got mannerisms, ways of speaking that have come from great-grandparents that I have never known or met. I have probably got ways of thinking that come from great-grandparents further back, and I'll never know they're there because I never met or knew those people. I can recognise my mother and my grandmother in myself, but I can't really get much further back than that. The air that we breathe is air that's been being breathed by people for hundreds of thousands of years. It's the same air. The water we drink is the same water. Our ancestors are in us, we are them, and they are us. And this is, I think, what I'm thinking of when I talk about ancestors. And that one of the purposes of a funeral is this transformative process of making an ancestor, making somebody, changing. In death studies, we talk about continuing bonds. Druids will talk about making an ancestor. Sociologists and anthropologists talk about continuing bonds. So up until around the 1960s, the biggest model of bereavement and grief therapy came from Freud, known for being right about so many things. And he said that the main purpose of bereavement counselling and grief therapy was to separate you from the person that has died so that you can carry on with your life and form new relationships. And then around about the 1980s, various scholars all at the same time came up with this idea of continuing bonds that said, no, that's wrong. Actually, most of the time, that's not what you need to do. Sometimes it is. There are occasions when that is what you need. But usually, what you have to do is change the relationship, not end it. You need to renegotiate what that person is to you, how you relate to them, how they continue to relate to you. And a lot of the Druidic funeral services that I found out about, talked about, have this purpose of the continuing bonds, renegotiating, changing the relationship. So I'm now going to put my funeral director hat back on. So in October, I was at the Scottish Pagan Federation conference, listening to a guy talking about death ritual, I suppose, in folklore, what folklore and mythology in Scotland in particular has to say about the dead. And he was talking about how awful funeral directors are. Obviously, this raised my hackles a little bit because I am a human. Mostly, he was right, I have to say. The funeral industry has done exactly what he said. And exactly what Christopher said, it has taken our power away. It has taken our feeling of connection and responsibility, and it has medicalised it and it has industrialised it. However, I feel that there is a place for the funeral service, particularly in a world where most people have not grown up interacting with dead bodies and have grown up in houses that don't have parlours or front rooms that we use for best, and that do have central heating. All of these things are quite difficult if you are trying to deal with a dead body. What I see my purpose as a funeral director is effectively a death worker, a technician, whose job it is to facilitate modern people who are removed by a generation or two from this engagement with the dead, to facilitate and encourage and help them to do that. To help them to bury people on their land. We've done that, I think, 3 or 4 times. To help people to have their dead at home. If they can't have their dead at home, we turn our chapel into an extension of their home. So they come and they use that. We've had a family that was in every day for a week, I think, until they said, right, it's time to put the lid on the coffin now. We didn't say that, they said it. So I would part company from him in that I do think there is a role for the funeral director in the modern world. I think it's a different role. And I think it is a role about mending funerals. Chris spoke about broken funerals, and I totally agree with him. The biggest threat to funeral directors at the moment is the rise of direct cremation. This idea that, and you know, there are places for it, there are places where it works really well. But what it can do, and particularly there's a lot of false advertising around this, they will tell you it's a simple service. Well, it's not a service. They'll tell you it's a really simple, broken down funeral. It's not a funeral. They don't necessarily tell you where they're storing your people, where they're taking your people, where the crematorium is. And in the worst case scenario, grandma dies in hospital, and that's it, she's gone. You never see her again. We know one person that is still dealing with the grief that caused. And why are people opting for direct cremation in such numbers at the moment? They're doing it because modern funerals don't do what people need them to do. They may have fulfilled the right purpose 50, 60 years ago. The guy in the black hat with the stick and the hearse, and that may have been what people needed. But now what we need to do is we need to change, and we need to bring it up to date, and we need to make sure that we are giving people funerals that are meaningful and that work and that do the job that we need them to do. And that job is to celebrate, to honour the life of the person that has gone. We're really bad, you know, Celtic mythology is full of people boasting. You know, we've really lost that ability, you know, on our own behalf or on other people's behalves, to stand up and say, wasn't this person fucking great? And that's one of the things a funeral should be doing. It should be transforming. It should be transforming our relationship with that person and perhaps with the other people in the room. It should be allowing space for both joy and grief. To a good funeral, you should be laughing and you should be crying. And you should be crying without shame. And the funerals that we have at the moment are just not doing that job. And my suggestion is that Druids are very good at crafting rituals that do those things and that allow them to do those things. So a Welsh Druid gave cremation to the world, for better or worse. It may well be that a Welsh Druid gives composting to Britain. Let us hope so. I would suggest that Druids should also be giving meaningful ritual funerals to the world. That we should be, certainly those that are celebrants, going out beyond, into our communities, beyond the Druid community, although certainly there, and teaching people how to be ritualists. Civil celebrants are really good at words. They're good at talking. They can tell a good story. They're not good at ritual. And this is the thing that we lost with church funerals. So it used to be that everybody had a church funeral. And with the change in the religious landscape, they don't suit everybody. They're not suitable for many people now. They're very much the minority. But what they did have was ritual. And that is something we are deeply in our bones. We are ritual animals. And we've lost, with the passing of church funerals, we have lost that ritual. We have lost simple things like communal singing. There's nothing as powerful as communal singing. And some of the best funerals that I've been to, non-religious funerals, they found a way to do the communal singing because there is nothing like that. And this is where I feel that Druidry has something to offer the world. And I would suggest to you and hope that some of you would take this forward and consider this as a gift to the world, that we can help people and teach people to reconnect with the dead, to be comfortable in whatever measure with the physicality of the dead, to include them, to rebuild those connections, and to make death normal. So my supervisor, who's one of the big names in death studies, Douglas Davies, has written several books arguing that funerals are essentially words against death, that the purpose of a funeral is to help us to overcome death, to see ourselves as having in some way triumphed over death. And that works really well in a Christian worldview. Doesn't work so well, really, I think, for us. And I would say that a funeral, certainly a Druid funeral, does not seek to transcend or to deny or to conquer death, but to acknowledge its absolute ordinariness. By making death ordinary and by creating funerals that don't happen to us, but in which we actively and fully create and participate. And I hope that in the future, as the Druid death culture and funeral culture develops, that what it will give to the world is to help us to restore our relationship with death and with the dead, and as a result of that, to live more fully. Thank you.
Let's talk about the future. I need to talk some more. Wrap your loving arms around me. I'm always waiting at your door. And the children don't care about what they don't understand. So keep this doomsday poison right out of their little hands. Trees are watching from the sidelines, they're always near. And the blackbird singing its song, he says have no fear. Everybody knows when the name is called, you take the easy way out, let someone else do it all. We're in the eye of the storm, tell me what's going on. No one cares if it's right or wrong. All they want to talk about is weak or strong in this playground. We're in the eye of the storm. They make the truth and they tell the lies. While rockets soar in drone-filled skies, they break the rules and they walk on by in this playground. He's there in every playground, kid with a new toy. He lets everybody know that it's bigger than the other boys. And when he sees what he wants, he's gonna come your way. And if you don't hand it over, he's gonna take it anyway. Now the ice is melting and the tide is turned. The sky is falling and all the trees are burned. Switch off, switch on, you're always connected. Your mind's not your own, you know they always direct you. We're in the eye of the storm. Tell me what's going on. No one cares if it's right or wrong. All they wanna talk about is weak or strong in this playground. We're in the eye of the storm. They make the truth and they tell the lies. While rockets soar in drone-filled skies, they break the rules and they walk on by in this playground. In the eye of the storm, now we've all stopped thinking. With this intelligence, our little minds are shrinking. While you sleep tonight, those little wheels keep turning. It's got a mind of its own, nothing stops it learning. Breaking the religions, killing the community. The biggest armies have the biggest immunity. Listen to the wise man, listen to the goddess too. Their voices are faint now, they're still talking to you. 'Cause nobody knows how long this peace will last. Will we make it to the future or we fall on our knees into the past? So batten down the hatches and brave this perfect storm. Survive the night and see the morning. We're in the eye of the storm. Tell me what's going on. No one cares if it's right or wrong. All they want to talk about is weak or strong in this playground. We're in the eye of the storm. They make the truth and they tell the lies. While rockets soar in drone-filled skies, they break the rules and they walk on by in this playground. We're in the eye of the storm. Tell me what's going on. No one cares if it's right or wrong. All they want to talk about is weak or strong in this playground. We're in the eye of the storm. They make the truth and they tell the lies. While rockets soar in drone-filled skies, they break the rules and they walk on by in this playground.
That talk wraps up our revisit to the Winter Gathering, and I hope you enjoyed the talks given by Christopher and Jenny. After the talk you heard Eye of the Storm from Order member and musician Bruce Welsh. Thank you so much for sending that in, Bruce. A poignant and powerful song. Lots of you have written in to say how much you've been enjoying Kerry's poetry and story over the last couple of episodes. And this month we have Lorna Rose, a poet, author and member of the Order, with her poem dedicated to Bride. And the background music is The Lodge by Breton Harper's Myrddin and Zil.
She of the blazing hearth, she of the creation forge, she of the healing balms of plants, milk and words, she of the eternal flame, the constant kindness, the great keening howl of loss, she of the fertile earth and full womb, she who walks in magic, breathes it and gifts it, she who brings the spring, gently coaxing the first snowdrop from the frozen ground, she who finds the golden ring that will save a maid in the belly of a salmon. She who rises shining, she who will not be saddled, she who tames the wild animals with freedom, who blesses the wells and sacred waters. She who dances under the birch trees and brings brightness, she the exalted one, the dream keeper who speaks prophecy and makes the vital music of the soul.
Well, my friends, this music means we are approaching the end of the show. But before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a copy of Christopher Hughes's book As the Last Leaf Falls. And the question I asked was, what is the name of the Welsh Druid who helped make cremation legal in the UK? Well, the answer in his lovely onesie is Dr. William Price, and the name drawn from the hat and winner of that wonderful book is Rain McGeorge from Portland, Oregon. Congratulations, Rain. That book will be with you very soon. The prize this month, inspired by Lorna's poem to Bride, is Bride's Healing, Ireland's Celtic Medicine Traditions by Gina McGarry, and the question I'd like you to answer is, Bridget or Bride is connected to a sacred flame in Ireland. Where is that sacred flame? Bride or Bridget is connected to a sacred flame in Ireland. Where is that sacred flame? Email your answer along with your full postal address to podcast@druidry.org, and one of you will win that amazing book. Well, my friends, that is a show. I'll see you next month again for DruidCast episode 223. But until then, I wish you all, as ever, peace and blessed be. Goodbye.